What's going on, guys? Back out here with Ray today, and we're going to swap out his mounts. He has some Hasport mounts we're going to throw on. We're also going to throw on his new K-Tune shifter. We're first going to start with the mounts, and we're going to give you a walkthrough of those today. First thing we're going to do is the driver's side mount. We have to get the cruise control removed, so we're going to take off the 10mm bolts holding the brackets to it, and then we're just going to kind of slide it out of the way. We're going to start on that mount first, but we need to support the engine, and what I like to use is my floor jack with a 2x4 on it. With the engine supported, we can now go ahead and remove, there's two 17mm nuts, and there's also another 17mm nut on the top of the motor mount. Okay, after having these two removed, this one is a little pesky, it doesn't want to come out, it looks like it's stripping together, but we can leave it on, and we're going to remove, there's three 14mm nuts, actually bolts that are holding the bracket to the car. You have one down there, there's one on the side here, and the third one is down there. Get all three of those removed. And now you can just go ahead and remove them out. And here's a look at Ray's mount. You can see this one's in obvious need of replacement. It was just torn apart and it's no longer providing the same support as it should. This mount requires the use of the supplied bracket, but we noticed when putting it in, we're going to have to remove this bracket which holds the power steering reservoir. Underneath it, there's a 10mm bolt. We have to move it out of the way because this bolt position right here will not allow us to get it further over. So we're going to move it over and see if we can maybe just spin it a little bit and have the power steering reservoir a little bit further away from the bracket. There's actually two bolts down there, so we're just going to remove both of them really quick. We also had to remove, there was a little clamp on the power steering hose and it was attached to the chassis right here. We needed that out of the way because the corner of this mount was hitting against there. So now that we have that removed, we can go ahead and bolt in all four of the 14mm bolts. What I did there was grind off a small part of the power steering bracket. That way we can bolt it in with just that bottom bolt and still hold the reservoir in place. And now you can go ahead and drop the mount in. It'll slide right over the two posts, and then go ahead and insert the bolt with the nut. Ray bought this kit used and he didn't have the hardware. Luckily I have a ton, so we found one that's appropriate size for fitting, and it'll fit perfectly through the bracket. And in the description we're going to go ahead and leave all the torque specs for all the mounts. I don't want to do it as we're going through this process. That way I can save you the trouble. If you need one particular torque spec, just go in the description. You can find all of them right there. We're going to leave the mount like this as we move on to the passenger side mount. The reason being, I was talking to Ray and mentioning that the T-bar in the rear connected to the mount, I cannot remember if we need to lift the entire engine. So what we may need to do is remove the bolt which holds the mount to the chassis. Same one on this side. I did this on my track car about 4 years ago, where I had to change the rear mount. I loosened up the T-bar, all of the bolts holding it to the transmission and the mount. And I was able to slide it up, but I needed a little bit more room, so I removed both bolts for the mounts, and then I just lifted it straight up so I could move the T-bar out of the way. So we're not going to put our cruise control back on yet. We're just going to leave it hanging there in case we need to get to it. That way we have less bolts to remove. But going to the passenger side, that one is a lot easier to remove. We're still going to leave the engine supported, but we're going to slide the 2x4 to the transmission side now. That way we can lift it up and down on this side a little easier. And this one is very easy. We're first going to start with this 17mm on the mount itself. In our race car, he's going to remove his intake real quick. It'll just give us a little bit more room in this area. Plus, if we need it for the T-bar and removing any of those on the rear mount. Okay, we have the motor mount bolt removed. There's a bolt back here holding the mount to the chassis. So in order for us to get to that, we could probably put a wrench back there. We're going to make it easy on ourselves. We're going to remove, there's two 14mm nuts. There's one here and one on the inside. I'm sorry, I said 14, but I meant 17. the two 17mm nuts, and then you have a 17mm bolt right here. Once we remove those, you can remove this entire bracket and have a lot easier access to that 17 on the chassis. Now we have full access. Go ahead and remove both 17mm bolts, the one down here and the one on the top. And then you have one more 17mm that's directly on the bottom of the mount. Go ahead and get that last one removed and the mount will come right off. And this mount, it's obviously has a little bit of wear and tear on it. It's still in a lot better shape though than the other mount. So in reverse, what we're gonna do is just mount the motor mount back first, because that's the easiest part, and then put the transmission bracket, and this side's done. This one is very easy. Okay, and with the passenger mount done, we're now gonna work on the T-bar. There's 4 bolts holding it to the transmission and the mount. The first one we need to remove, it's right behind this wiring right here. You're gonna see it's a 17mm. And at the bottom side of the T-bar, you have these two 19mm bolts we need to remove. And the last one is on the mount itself. It's where the T-bar connects to the mount. The bolt head is facing the driver's side of the car. Get all 4 of those removed. After you have all 4 of those removed, now we can attempt to remove the mount itself. For us, removing this bolt back here was the most difficult. The two 19s under the car weren't that hard. Same with the bolt facing the battery side. Those were relatively easy. This one we had to use a breaker bar with some extensions. That way it gave us a little bit of room to crank here. And we also removed the throttle cable. That way we had a little bit more room to spin that breaker bar. So to get the mount removed from the subframe, it's going to be attached with 3 bolts. There's one here, one on this side, and one on the front. Those are 14mm. We should be able to drop down an extension, maybe with a U-joint or just the extension in the deep sockets. We're going to try getting all 3 of those removed. And here we have the ratchet installed on that back left with just a handful of extensions. So we're going to get that one removed. Then we're going to slide it forward. It looks like we have the room to the front one and then also the opposite side. Okay, we have all 3 of the bolts removed, and we were able to just reach it with some extensions. So now we're having trouble getting the mount out because the T-bar, it doesn't give us enough room to slide the mount out. What we're going to do is we're going to remove both the bolts holding the 2 side mounts in place, and then we're going to lift up the engine maybe about an inch or so. We think that'll give us enough room to get the T-bar up and the mount out to the side, and then we can slide the new mount in. Okay, and with both bolts removed, we have 2 hydraulic jacks underneath. One is under the transmission, the other one is under the oil pan. We're going to jack both of those at the same time. Go for it. Keep going. Do the side a little more. Is it going together with the car now? Okay, we'll try that with the room it gave us. And that worked, guys. It gave us just enough room to get the T-bar up a little bit. The little heater hoses coming out of the firewall, they were kind of in the way. We just kind of moved those, and we got that mount out. So let's take a look at this one. This one also, this one is terrible. Look at it, the centerpiece. It's not even in there any longer, so this mount was in definite need of repair. So now we're going to try to get this one fed in. We should. This one actually looks smaller. It's not even as tall as the other mount, so we shouldn't have any issue getting it in. We're going to attempt that very quickly. And we were able to get the Hasport mount installed by doing that same method. Ready to just go ahead and tighten those up right now, getting them all set up on the subframe, and then we're going to lower the engine back down and then tighten up the bolts, and then we're going to go ahead and retorque everything. And we got everything buttoned up. He's just finishing tightening that rear mount, the bolt which goes through the T-bar to the mount itself. Next we're going to move on to that K-tune shifter. Here we're dropping the shift linkage on the car. We're not going to show you how to install it. Installing the shifter is relatively easy. We're just going to get it thrown on really quick and kind of see how it looks and how it feels in comparison to the old one. Okay, we're about to install the new shifter, and we were looking at it. See how Ray's twisting it? It looks like you can adjust where the pivot joint is. You can either twist it in more, or you can twist it out. We decided we're just gonna kind of leave it in the middle. And that way in the future, if he wants to adjust it and change the throw of it, I think that's what it's for. Also, so if you have a larger exhaust, like if it's hanging low, you can raise it a little bit so it's not rubbing on your exhaust. Ray's under the car getting the shifter tightened up. Now the K-Tune one has exactly the same mounting points as this. There's a third one. I guess you could essentially drill a hole and mount the third bolt. We're gonna do without it. We figure this one has the 2 already, and the 2 OEM holes are already there for the K-Tune shifter. So he's attaching it right there. Then we're gonna lift the shift linkage back up, and then we need to get the upper half of it put on. And here's a look at the shifter installed under his car. That's what I was talking about, using those 2 bolt holes. I think we could drill for the third one, but I don't think it's necessary. We did some playing around with the adjustment on the height. We actually spun it in a little more. That seemed to feel a little bit better when shifting gears. We had it out a little far, and it was weird. It was kind of notchy getting it into gears, and it didn't feel as nice when it was sticking down a little further. And here's a look at it in the cabin. Looks real sharp. We had to remove the shifter surround. That way it's a little bit easier to access. And plus, if he wants to make some adjustments to the height of it, we're gonna leave it off for now. That way he can make adjustments as he's driving it if he wants to maybe bring it up a little bit or change the position. We kind of just threw this on here to get a full idea of how it feels in shifting, but it does feel really crisp now with the new motor mounts. And last time we were here, we changed out his shifter bushings as well, so it feels really crisp now compared to the stock setup. And what Ray's doing, he's just finishing tightening up the exhaust manifold bolts. On his car, this is a Nebraska car, and we were having issues getting out the linkage pin. So we went ahead and just dropped the exhaust manifold. That way we did the adjustments with the shifter underneath the car here. It just made it a lot easier for us to access it. One thing he added since I last saw him, he got his K-tuned turn down muffler installed. And we were out here one day, I didn't record it. We had a seized bolt on the lower control arm right here attached to the trailing arm. And that was such a pain to get removed. And I think that's the issue we're having with the shift linkage, just the rusted and corrosion on them, making them difficult to get taken off. And that'll wrap it up, guys. Got the mounts and shifter finished today. Next time, not sure what we'll get done on this car, but hopefully we'll get some more content on it in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you.